Doing Maimorim Meluket Chelik Dalet. This is the 43rd Maimer. This is also in the end of the Sefer Chelik Dalet, in which they collected the Maimorim that weren't fully Meluket. And this Maimer, Vesamti Kadkod Shimshtiich, the Rebbe said in Shabbos Parshas Re'eh, Mevorcha HaChodesh Elul, in the year tefillah. It says over here in the note that the opening and the end of the Maamar, which is the Maamar begins with something kadkot, and then the explanation for this first part of the Maamar is at the end of the Maamar, were looked over by the Rebbe. They were muga. But the Maamar itself is a hemshech to the Maamar of Divra Maschil V'Yekev Tishmaun of Shabbos Parshas Eikev. That was the previous Shabbos over there, which is the previous Maimer over here as well. And so the Maimer itself, the Rebbe wasn't Magia, but the opening and the end of it, the Rebbe was Magia, and that's why they put it in over here. A lot of the Maimer will explain some of the Inyonim that we learned in the previous Maimer in Parshas Eikev, and over there, that Maimer was based on, as we learned over there, this is a Tzemach Tzedek, on the Maimer of the Tzemach Tzedek, which it's based on. But in any event, so this is a Maimer that as a follow-up, the Maimer that next Shabbos that the Rebbe gave on Parshas Re'eh. Okay, so we'll do the Maimer inside now. Beside the Shmaya, Shabbos Parshas Re'eh Mevorach Machedesh Elul Hey Tovshin Tezayin. It says Anocha Bilti Muga. It's not a Anocha Bilti Muga outside of these first beginning parts. So in the prophecy of Yeshaya in Perik Nun Daled Pasuk Yud Beit, he talks about how Yerushalayim will be built so beautiful. So he says over there, the Pasuk says ושמתי kadkot shimshtiך. Shimshtiך, depending is different interpretation. It comes from the Lashon Shemesh, the lighting over there. And either it means the windows, or it means the towers, or the lighting up, but different Mefarshim explain it. But the Eibishter will make these lightings kadkot. What exactly is kadkot? And then bechol it says that Shoraich lavnei egdov v'chol gvulich lavnei chayfetz, meaning all the beautiful things that will take place. But what is the meaning of kadkot? That the shimshtiich, the lightings, will be with kadkot. So the Gemara translates that. The Rebbe will explain in Ruchnis Ha'inyonim the two stones which were on the breastplate on the Choshen of the Kohen Gadol. The two bottom ones, the bottom row, which was in the order of the Shvatim, are Yosef and Binyamin, is Shoham and Yashfeh. And the Rebbe discusses how these two precious stones represent the avodah of Yosef and Binyamin. Yosef is the Tzadik Elyon, who is Mamshich, and Binyamin is the one who is Maila. Torah and tefillah, the Rebbe talks the Mailas in each one, but La'asir Lavoi, there will be a combination. It will be Kadkod, as the Gemara says, V'amr Razal. So our sages of blessed memory say, what is this Kadkod? Kad Omar, one says that the stones, the shemashtiich, that will be, it's shoyam. That's the stone, the precious stone that they put in the breastplate was shoyam. That was for Yosef. V'chad Omar, and one says, another opinion is Yashfeh, that it is the stone Yashfeh, which was the stone for Binyamin. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says, what does it mean, kadkot? Lahavi kideinu kidein. It should be like this and this. In other words, it'll be both. It'll be Shoham and Yashfeh. What does it mean by Pashtus? It'll be both. It'll be some of this or partially this. They'll both be there. Side Shoyam, side Yoshvei. And that's the word kadkot, kideinu kidein. By both. That's the meaning. And the Rebbe in avodah Adam, in avodah Hashem, explained that we need both kideinu kidein. Hine. Posik zeh hu echad hayeudim sheyihu bahagula hasida lavoi. So this pasuk is one of the promises that will be that Hashem promised us in the Navi in the future redemption, which is coming through Mashiach Tzidkenu b'meher v'yimeinu speedily in our days. V'yesh bozeh beis efanim, and there is two ways when the Geula comes. It can come about through the avodah of Shoham. So the kadkot, it could be Shoham, the two opinions, could be Shoham, and it could be Yashfeh. That avodah brings about the Geula Hasidah. Mamer HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahavi kideinu kidein. And the Eibusher says it will be both. Meaning that both the avodah of Shoham and Yashfeh together bring the Geula Hasidah, because there's a maila, an advantage. Everything comes through avodah Adam, as the Rebbe will explain. There's a maila in the avodah of Shoham, and there's a maila in the avodah of Yashveh. And therefore, the Eibusher said both of them together, both of them will bring about the Geula Hasidah. To understand these two ways in the spiritual matter. Hainu. And that is to understand Bahagilui Elokos Sheyi La'osilovai, in the revelation of godliness that is going to be the future, which it's going to be, it's going to come, that's the way this Adam, and it's going to be Shoham v'Yashvei, that's going to be the Shimshosayich. So to understand what is that Gilui, Yuvan Zeh, so we were able to understand this. These stones, these two stones of Shoham and Yashveh, or part of the 12 precious stones, Asher ba'achoshen shel Kohen Gadol, which are in the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, of the garment that the Kohen Gadol wore. Lemispar Shivtei Bnei Yisrael, that was to the number of the tribes of Yidden. There was the 12 tribes, and there were 12 stones. And these two stones of Shoham and Yashveh, Shehem Keneged Yosef, Shoham Keneged Yosef, Yashveh Keneged Binyamin. Shoham corresponds to Yosef, and Yashveh corresponds to Binyamin. So now that we know that Shoham corresponds to Yosef, Yashveh, Binyamin, we can start digging further by understanding the level of Yosef and the level of Binyamin, and then we will understand the advantage, how it's going to be in the future to come. La'osid Hine Yosef and Binyamin, the level Yosef and Binyamin, and Tzadik Elyon v'Tzadik Tachten, the supreme Tzadik and the lower Tzadik, and the Tzadik of Tachten. The Rebbe explains now that Yosef, the Tzaddik Elyon, means that he is mamshich from above. And when you give milmayla lamata, it's not measured according to the recipient's ability to receive. You're mashpia. You give, the main thing is the hashpoa milmayla lamata. On the other hand, Binyamin, the Tzaddik Tachten, he refines the Tachten to be a keli to the Elyon, to elevate milmato lamaylo. So There is an advantage in each one because it comes milmailo without measured according to the recipient's abilities to receive. It means you get a higher oir because you're coming down from a higher place. And you don't even have to be able to receive it. But on the other hand, there's an advantage in refinement of the lower because then he really unites, because once he's refined, he unites with the idea, with the godliness, as opposed to when it comes from above, beyond him, it's not really fully united. Let's look inside. The bechinas Yosef hu hamshochas elokus milmaylo lemata. The level of Yosef is to draw down godliness from above to below. As we find, what does the pasuk say? What did Yosef do? Yosef hu hamashbir bar. Yosef was the one that provided the food in the land of Mitzrayim. So Yosef is considered the one who provides. He is the mashpia. He brings down godliness. Shemamshich elokus milmaylo lemata. He draws down godliness from above into the mata, into low, into the world. And that means, and that is, Gam kasher ha'olam loy nizdachich adayin, that even if the world has not yet been refined, ad kidei kach sheyuchal lekabel betoiche gilu oir naila, to such an extent to be able to receive in it a revelation of an elevated light, meaning the world is not a keli, it's not a vessel, it's not been refined to receive such a great light. And yet, Yosef is mashpia. Mikol mokoim, nimshach oir b'derech milmayl lamato. That Yosef represents, light comes from above to below, in not considering whether the bottom is recipient can receive it or not, it's hashpa. Bechin has binyamin, but on the other hand, you have the level of binyamin, who's zichuch ve'aliyah milmato l'maylo. So here is the refinement and an elevation from below to above. Hainu, that is, shepoyel birur zichuch aliyah. That means that he impacts, the avodah is to sort out, and the refinement, and to elevate v'hiskashrus b'neshamas Yisrael v'chelkom ba'olam, and to connect the Yidden and their part in the world, to refine them, make the world a better place so that it can receive godliness. And he does it by the Yidden and the Yidden's portion, and by extension, because every Yid has a chelik, his dalaramas, his area. So the work within an individual and then his part in the world, which automatically everybody together creates an elevation of all of the world. And also automatically, also in the creation in general, they should be able to receive the light. When you elevate and you refine, then you can come to the higher level. Just because they exist doesn't mean that they can receive the godliness. You have to be refined level. As the Rebbe brings a mashal, you have the physical brain, also an animal has, yet in the brain of an animal, there could be no seichel there. There's no intelligence, because you need a refined brain to get the intelligence. So in order for the Yidden to be able to receive that godliness that is given to them, to connect to that godliness, they need to be refined. That level of refinement, that's the level of Binyamin, the Tzaddik Tachnu, who refines the bottom to be able to receive and connect to the godliness. And that elevates them and their part in the world and the whole world to the light of Hashem. By way of example, is the brain or the physical brain, the moyach of an animal, is not a vessel to the intellect. But the brain of a human being is a vessel for the intellect, to the because it's refined. So basically, you need to refine the vessels in order for it to be able to receive the elikus, the Ein Sof. Hine avedos shel binyamin hu ha'alo milmat l'maylo. So what is the service of binyamin is to elevate from below to above. Shepo yelzichu b'moyach v'seichel ha'adam, that he impacts a refinement in the brain and the human intellect, so that the brain and the intellect of the human being should become a vessel for this elevated godly light. And that's represents binyamin, avodah milmat l'maylo. Okay, now, so there's an advantage of getting more light, which comes from milmayla lamata, or being able to unite with that light if it comes milmata lamayla. In each one of these ways, milmayla lamata or milmata lamayla, each one has a very unique, special advantage. Hamayla ba'avidasa shel binyamin shu inyan Yashfeh, the advantage of the service of binyamin, which is Yashfeh, is shahamato misyached yoser im ha'oir haliki, that the lower unites more with the godly light because it's refined, so he becomes united with this. Since that it comes down, what is drawn down is because of the refinement that he became a vessel for that light. The lower became a vessel of light. That's why the light comes to it. So then he's in the full, complete unity with the light. He really receives it because he already reached that level of refinement to be able to contain and unite with that light. On the other hand, and the advantage in the service of Yosef, Shoham, which is the inyan of Shoham, that what it drawn down is a very elevated light, which is not measured according to the way the tachten can receive it. It's not limited, but it is as is from the upper one. There's a full force of light, notwithstanding what the tachten can take. It just comes down. So, but it doesn't unite. So binyamin milmata, the zichuch, the light that comes down, you unite with it, but it's limited to what you can get. The light that comes milmata from Yosef, the level of Shoyam, that is a higher light. That's what the Eibishter says. It should be like both kidein and kidein. In the future, there will be both advantages. We will get the higher light, and it will be united. Both together. And the Mamer over there explains at length how both inyanim will be lost in love. But now the Rebbe wants to concentrate on our avodah in these two areas. because everything that we are going to receive in the future to come, the Kidenu Kidein, is based on our work. That means, since La'asid Lava, we need both, we have the work in both areas now in the duration of the Golus until we get the time of the Geula Hasid Aliyah. Hine Yedua, and behold, it's known, Shekol HaGiluyim Sheyu La'asid, that all of the revelations that will be in the future, Tluyim b'ma'aseinu v'avedeseinu kol zman meshach hagolus, are hinged on our actions, our service during the time of exile. All the time of what we're in the Golus, we work now for the Giluyim loss. Malachar shela'osid yiyu ha'ofanim de milmaylo lamato lamaylo, since in the future there will be these two styles of both bringing down from above to below and from below to above. So we have to say shagam b'ha'avodah bizman meshach hagolus, that also in this service during the duration of the golus, yeshna gam kinefanim elu, we have the two avodas, the avodas of milmaylo lamato lamaylo. And the Rebbe was going to explain that there's the two, there is Torah and tefillah, and the various different accomplishment which each one has. So we need to understand what are these two types of services that we have today of Shoham and Yashfeh in the service of Hashem, as the Rebbe will continue to explain. But now the Rebbe goes back to continue the maamar that the Rebbe said in the previous Shabbos, the maamar of Ekev Tishmu. And then we will see how these avodas line up, the different avodas Adam, with these two styles of Shoham and Yashfeh. The that the Ekev refers to the time of the hills of Mashiach. The pasuk says Ekev Tishmeun. So the Mamer explained that the Ekev refers to the time of Ikshad and Mashiach. Why? Because the pasuk says Ekev Tishmeun. Ekev means that Tishmun means that you will listen. How do we know we're going to listen? But because we're talking about Ekev, the end, the Iksa, the Mashiach, so there's no choice. You're going to have to listen because the Geula is coming. The Oz, Hine Tishmun Vadai, that says you will listen for sure. Because it's the last generation before the Geula Hasidah. And no one will be forsaken. Nobody will be pushed away from the Geula. Everybody will have to do teshuvah. It will be tishmon. You'll have to do teshuvah. That's why in this generation, for sure, you're going to listen. Okay, so that's the preparation. Is going to be tishmon. How? So the pasuk says in the Ekev it represents, as the Rebbe explained the Mamer, the machshava dibur ma'isa is going to be devoted to Torah mitzvahs versus devoted to other stuff. So what is the general avodah? Tishmun ushmartem v'asisim. Tishmun ushmartem. The Rebbe explained in the Mamer Shem Machshava in the Mamer before. Machshava diburu ma'isa. Basically, Tishmun is Machshava, Shmartem is Dibur, and Asisem is Ma'isa. And the Rebbe doesn't go back, that's all explained in the previous Mamer, how Tishmun is connected to Machshava, Shmartim is connected to Dibur, Nasisim is to Maisa. But basically, Machshava, Dibur, Maisa, Ekev Tishmun will be proper in all areas. When the thought, speech, and action of the person will be only the godly, his nefesh elikis, thought, speech, and action. What is this thought, speech, and action of the godly soul? The Torah mitzvahs. That's thought, speech, and action of Torah mitzvahs. That's what the godly soul wants to think, speak, and do. It's only Torah mitzvahs. Azai, then Hineveshomar Hashem Elikecha Lecho. Then Hashem will keep for you be mamshich, corresponding to today is also the three levels: Esa Bris, Vesa Chesed, Vesa Shvuah. And the Mamer explained before that Bris and Chesed and Shvuah are the machshava dibur maisa of godliness. Sheyumshach machshava dibur maisa shamilmaila, a love will come from above to him through the machshava dibur maisa of the yid, and Torah will be the godly machshava dibur maisa. The level of the Eberster's thought, speech, and action will be nimshach, will extend to the person. The bechol, generally speaking, who shall yidei avodah, that through the service, the ekev tishmun, the machshava dibur maisa, through his service, nasa yichud ha'oved im hanevad, there becomes a union from the one who serves with the one who is being served. As we said before, when it comes milmato lemailo, you unite with the godliness and you become a union. Yichud neshama Yisrael ma'Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's a union neshama Yisrael ma'Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is a yichud ponim beponim, face to face, meaning they inherited, they changed, they become godliness, and they unite with the godliness from above. But then we have a higher level, which is milmayda lamata. But when you come to the bechol of meidecho, so this would be bechol vavcho, bechol nafshecha, which is in hishtalshelus, which is the avodah, which brings you that refinement to connect to godliness through avodah. But then you have also bechol meidecha, which is beyond, with all your being in a way of higher, with the essence of the neshama, bechol meidecha, mamshich hagiluyim shelemaylo mehishtalshelus. Then you bring down the giluyim higher nishtalshelus. That would be like a higher level. But you can't get that higher. You can't just work bechol meidecha. You have to have first the connection. That's the kidein ukidein. You need to first be the milmata lamailo to reach up to the highest level to become that union neshamas Yisrael ma'Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then you can get from the Abba b'chol meidecha the higher level ma'al mishtalshelus. Omnam zeh shal yidei v'dosei mamshich hagilu shemil mailo. But the fact is that he brings down the gilu from above. That's not his avodah. That's not that you can reach. That's hamshacha mil mailo. Hurak mitzad akrisus bris bilvad. That is because there was a covenant. And there's a covenant. And therefore, the Eibishter said, if you do it, I'll be mamshach the higher level. It's not that you can tap into there. You can't refine yourself in order to get higher than Ishtalshelus. But the Christus bris gives you from the higher level than Ishtalshlus. Shahari lav mikol ilain midois ihu klal. Because the Eberster is not all these midois, which is Ishtalshlus, or even in Atzilus. The midois, this is not Hashem. He is not part of these midois. So our midos, our investment in Torah, mitzvahs, machshava, dibur, maises, and ishtalsha is not going to bring that down. In order for the act of the created being to take up space, basically, that Hashem should care and give us that bris, give us that higher mishtalshalus, hurak mitzad habris. That's only before the bris. A covenant. The Eibishter says, you do these things and you work on the first three things, then I'll give you something which is higher and a higher level. What is this covenant? So the Rebbe is going to explain now that covenant is Torah. The idea of Torah. We have the avodah, machshava, dibur, maisa, in the observance of mitzvahs. That's all the level of milmata l'maylo. But then we have the hamshocha, the bris, the covenant, which comes milmaylo, which is Torah. The Torah gives us the higher level, higher than hishtalshlus. V'hinei inyan habris hu Torah. That's the Torah. The Torah is the level of this covenant. Where do we see Torah's covenant? The covenant that he formed with us in Chodev. Chodev is Matan Torah by Har Sinai. There was a covenant. That's the covenant. That's the bris. Yalkut, and also in the Yalkut al Posik Eila Divrei Habris Isa. Over there we find Ein Bris Ella Torah. That the bris, the covenant, that's Torah. Torah is the covenant. And the Torah becomes the bris that to bring down higher with the Yidden, the higher than Ishtalshlus, to come down into by the Torah is the memutza, as the Rebbe will explain now, intermediary that includes both parts, as the Rebbe will explain out the two levels of intermediaries. V'hainu, shahaTorah hu habris hama'ached neshamas Yisrael im HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the covenant. That's the uniting neshamas Yisrael with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says K'moshe Kosu, the pasuk says, Anoichi oimed bein havaya ubeinechem. The level of Anoichi, I mean, this was said by Moshe Rabbeinu, but the level of Anoichi is the level of godliness, which is in between bein havaya ubeinechem. That's the covenant that brings together Havaya and the Neshamas Yisrael with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is through the level of Anoichi, which is the level of Torah. Torah is the level of Anoichi. As we know, the Rebbe doesn't bring it down here. I know Nafshis Ksovis Yehovis. Anoichi, the Eibishter put himself into Torah. But Torah is the connector piece between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Neshamas Yisrael. Anoichi oimed bein havaya. The Anoichi, Misha Anoichi. Anoichi, which is whoever I am. When you say Anoichi, you're talking about a level in godliness that cannot be described. You just say I, meaning whoever I am. Anoichi Misha Anoichi. Without giving it a definition, without being it a tzir, without defining it, because it's not definable. You're talking about a level of godliness, which is not defined like in a sphere or in to name it. It's just high, meaning it's a higher level of godliness. The loy Isramis, loy bishum ois, loy bishum koitz, who is not hinted, not in any letter. Can't a letter hinted? Loy bishum koitz, not even in a point of a letter. That's higher than that. That would be not anoichid. That would be a death letter. You could describe, but this is higher, a level of God which is higher. The bechol hu keser. Generally, that's the level of keser. Hine hu mechaber Yisrael v'kutsha brichu. So the keser is the anoichi, which is the level of keser, is oimed ben havai benechem. He connects mechaber Yisrael v'kutsha brichu. That connects the in al Torah. The Torah, the anoichi, the keser, is the connecting piece between the Eibishter. That's the bris of connection with the Yid. So the Rebbe is going to explain now what do we mean when we say the Keser is the connecting piece. And there's two ideas in a mamutza, in an intermediary, either because it has two pieces, one from the higher and one from the lower, and in one piece that connects them, or they become lamish like one, the connecting piece. Let's see inside. To explain this idea, based on what is known, that whenever we have an intermediary that connects two items, it has two levels. One level in the intermediary which belongs to the upper. Base, and the second level that's connected has a connection to the lower level. Because that level has one from the upper and one from the lower, they base through the two levels in that one level, it becomes an intermediary that connects. And likewise, we'll understand in Torah. Torah has Shehi Memutza Hamachaber Neshamas Yisrael v'Kudsha Brichu. The Torah is the intermediary which connects Neshamas Yisrael and Kudsha Brichu. Because Sheyesh B'HaTorah B'china HaSheyachas L'Nevroim. In the Torah, there's a level which has a connection to the creation. And there's a level that is connected to Hashem, that belongs to Hashem. That's how the Torah connects the Neshamas Yisrael with Kudsha Brichu, is because the Torah has a level which is connected to Neshamas Yisrael. It has a level which is connected to Kudsha Brichu. That becomes the Mechaber, the Memutza that connects. What are the piece that is shaykhs to the Yidden? Is the Kashmis HaTorah. That's the revealed part of Torah. What is the part which is shaykhs to Hashem, to Kodesh Baruch Hu? That's the Pnimius HaTorah, the esoteric, the hidden part of Torah. Dine HaTorah nislapshe b'dvarim gashmichol. Torah dressed up in physical matter. Umitzad zeh yishayechas l'nivroim. That's why it's connected to Nivroim, because of its physicality, because its manifestation in physical matters. Generally speaking, that's the revealed part of Torah. But there is a level in Torah, as it is in the spiritual matter. And that's the level of the hidden part of Torah, which talks about godly matter. That's why that's considered closed towards us. Because the Torah is the wisdom and the will of Hashem. So that part we're not really connected to. That's connected to Hashem. So the Torah has been brought down in a revealed in a physical way. That's connected to us. And the Rotzin Hashem, the wisdom of Hashem, that's Shaykhus to the Eibishter. By day base beginnes Elul, and through these two levels in Torah, in the way through these two levels, the Torah becomes that connecting piece between the Ein Sof and the Neshamas Yisrael. That's the Bris, that's the Torah, that's the Kesed. And the Rebbe is going to explain now also the Oisius, deeper in Kabbalah, about the level of Keser, the different, and also that there's two Madregas and really becomes a Mutza of one Madrega, as the Rebbe continues to explain now. To explain these two levels in Torah, the level that is connected to the Bnei Yisrael, the Galia, and the level that is connected to Kutchabrichu, the Sosim of Torah. To understand these two levels by Mikyoiser deeper, more deeper, Hine Yadua, it's known the Masha Raisem Chochma Nafkis, that which we say that the Torah comes from Chochma. So Chochma is the first of the 10 spheres. That's Chochma Ilah. And then you have Chochma Tato, Chochma of Malchus, which is the Torah that the Zohar says comes from which level of Chochma. It actually means even a higher level of Chochma. Ein hakavona al Chochma Tato, not on the lower level of Chochma. And not just on the Chochma law of the higher level of Chochma Datzilus, but actually to the Chochma Stimo, to Chochma of Keser. Kima Chochma Stimo, but on the hidden Chochma, the Torah is from the level of Chochma Stimo as well. The Chochma Stimo hu ha'mimutza ha'amiti. The real intermediary is Davke the Chochma Stimo, the real. Why is that? Even more than we talked before, Keser, that Keser has the memutza from both, and therefore it's a connecting, but the Amitis Hamamutza is Davke Chochma Stimo, not just Keser, but the Chochma Stimo. Why? The Hine Klolus HaKeser hu memutza bein Oid Ein Sof HaMaitzil VaNetzolim. That's generally Keser is the intermediary. The Keser has in itself, apart from the Netzolim, and it has a part of the Maitzel in it. So that's the two parts. But still, there are two parts in there. A true memutza has only one part. The Rebbe will explain. Buhu. Klolus HaKeser hu memutza bein HaMaitzel v'HaNetzolim. Ben Erin Sof HaMaitzel v'HaNetzolim. Keser in generally is an intermediary between the Ein Sof HaMaitzel and the Netzolim. V'hu al yidei beis ha-b'chinas sheba Keser, that's through the two levels that are in Keser, which is the b'china tachtoina sheba Maitzel, the lower level of the Maitzel, the b'china rishoina sheba Atzilus, and the first level of Atzilus. Keser is the beginning of Atzilus and is the end of the Maitzel. The idea beginnes base beginnes Elul through these two levels, beginne tachtoina sheba Maitzel, the sherish mokar hanetzolim, through the lower level in the Maitzel and from Hashem and Atzilus. So that becomes makes it the mamutza to connect the holiness of the mitzvah with Atzilus. Omnom beis bechinas elu k'moishe ein b'keser, as they're in keser, as opposed to chochmas timo. But the way they're in keser, hareim beis madreges miyuchodes. So there's two unique levels. Be'eze inyan amitis inyan hamamutza. That is not the true idea of an intermediary when it has two separate aspects, one from the top, one from the bottom. V'hamamutza ha'amiti hu b'chinas chochmas timo. The real mamutza is chochmas timo. Lefi, because in chochmas timo, sheb'chochmas timo, in the base beginning, these two levels, Hashayuchus la Maitzel, Hashayuchus la Atzilus, the connection to Maitzel and Atzilus, Einam base Madregis miyuchodes. They're not two unique levels. Elohim ki'echad, they're one level. V'lochein hu ha'memutza ha'amiti, and that's why that is the true memutza. A true memutza is not having two parts in it, which one is the higher and one is the lower, but a true memutza, in this case, chochmas timo, is not two separate. Those two levels, the shaykhs to the elyon, the top becomes one. And the Rebbe brings out now to demonstrate this from the power of chokhmah, that the power of chokhmah that has two aspects to it. One, that it can undress tziyur, it can see things in the raw stage without having been dressed up for in a format it's not been yet designed. It's just the essence. That's the high part of chokhmah, and the fact that chokhmah can come down into the lowest levels. And the Rebbe will explain the fact that chokhmah does not need tziyurim is what allows it to come down to the lowest levels. So that means that connection becomes one and the same. These are not two parts that are connecting in that they consist like by keser, but in chokhmah becomes one. That's the actual reason for it. Let's look inside. Yuvas derech Moshe. We'll understand it by way of an example. Like we see it by the human soul. In the power of Chokhmah, there is two opposite ideas over here. The power to undress and what's above, the wondrous. On one hand is the power to understand without any dress up or without any and understanding how the elevated level of it, but it also has the koyach hayirida v'halbasha. It has the power to descend and go down, all in chokhmah. Inyan haflosha b'chokhmah. What's the idea of the haflosha b'chokhmah? Hu mashib b'koycha lahafshit es haseichel matziyurim achumrim. It has the power to undress, to undo, to get to the raw, to the point. It undresses from all the shapes, materialistic shapes, and also from the physical designs, even from the spiritual designs. Chokhmah can see the point as it is. That is, that it undresses the seichel from all the different shapes that's in it. The length, the width, the depth, it does away with it. V'nishara kanakuda chokhmah. All what remains is the point of the idea. Shezo b'chinas hanakuda shebechokhmah. That's the point of chokhmah. That's on one hand what chokhmah does. Chokhmah, on the other hand, also b'inyan hayirida v'ha'halbasha the chokhmah, who, what is the descent and being able to dress up of chokhmah? That it's in the power of chokhmah to bring down the idea all the ways low. Kimoy, like we say, by Daber Shloishes Alof in Moshul, that he spoke 3,000 examples. It says Shloima HaMelech. 3,000 means 3,000 levels, brought down that same idea to very, very low. Ulamato Yesh, even lower than that. That's another aspect of Chokhmah. So now the Rebbe explains these two ideas, to undress and to bring it down to the lowest level. These are not two separate, distinguishable things, one from another. They're not two separate things. This is really one and the same idea. The the power to descend, to bring it down, comes because of the power of the undressing and seeing the thing as it is in its wondrous state. The fact that he can bring down this idea, an idea so low and low, is because he grabs the essence of the point of this idea, which is undressed from any shape. He can bring it down into anything. That is the real memutza. That means like Chokhmah has these both avenues, these both parts, but it's really one and the same. That the reason why it could go down lower is because it's so high, because it's mufshat from any tzir. Similar, we understand above in the level of Chokhmah. The base of Chokhmah, the two levels which are in Chokhmah, the level that has a connection to the Maitzel, and the level that has a connection to Atzilus, those two levels, they're not two separate, like in Keser, which they're two separate, but in Chmochla Stimo and Chochma Stimo, they're not two separate one from another. It's one and the same. That's why it's the true intermediary. So this, the Rebbe wants to explain deeper when we say that Torah is the Memutza. The Beis HaInyonim Shebetoira, these two aspects of Torah. Mashi Chochmos Shel HaKodesh Baruch Hu, the fact that it's Hashem's wisdom. Umash Nislapsh B'dvarim Gashmim, and the fact that it dressed up in physicality, so we say the connection to above, it's Hashem's wisdom. And the connection to the Nivroim is because Nislapsh B'dvarim Gashmim. Einam Beis B'chinas Nivdolim Zeh. These are not two separate levels which are distinct one from the other. Galia the Torah, Vesosim the Torah. Saying there's the revealed part of Torah and the hidden part of Torah. Ki'im she'raisa mechochma stimo nafkis. When we say raisa mechochma, that comes from raisa mechochma stimo nafkis, from the level of chochma stimo. Mitzad bechina halyone shebetoira, because of the higher level in Torah. So that's because of that specifically, because of the higher level, because of the Sosim Deraisa. That's why he descended below and dressed up in physical matters. Nikras So therefore, Torah is the bris, the covenant that ties the upper and the lower, because the level of Torah is the level of Chochmas Tema, which inherently has both aspects of it, the highest level connecting with Hashem and being able to come down because of that, all the ways lamata mata. Mutza ha'amiti, v'nishamas Yisrael v'eidin somarchu. That's the true intermediary between the Shamas Yisrael and Yisrael Baruch. So that's the idea that we're saying is the idea of Torah, which is the idea of bris. To connect the higher level, the highest of levels, with the Kashmis, with the Yidden, the way they are below. That's the bris the way it's in Torah, but there's also bris the way it's in mitzvahs. Mitzvahs nikroim bris. Also, mitzvahs are called the bris. Also, they're the connecting piece. Because also in mitzvahs we have these two levels. They themselves are made from physical matters. The mitzvahs are done with physical matters. And the Ratzon Elyon is the Eibishter wants this. The Eibishter wants to do this mitzvah. That's the Ratzon Elyon. The Ratzon Hu L'mayla M'Chochma. And this is the idea of a bris, which is higher than Chochma, because Ratzon is in a higher level than Chochma, and that comes down. And that connects. Mitzvahs, they connect the higher level, the level of Ratzon, with the Dvarim Gashmi. The same like we said before by Torah, that's not too separate, but it's tafke the same. It's because of the higher level that it can go down to the lower level. It's not two separate matters. It's really one and the same. Because the mitzvahs that dress up in physical matters, those are the Eibush that wants these physical mitzvahs. This is the Eibush that wants that the mitzvah should be done physically done. So the Ratzon Elyon is the Gashmi. Shehu Ratzon Elyon Shelamaylu Gama Chochma. And because it is the Ratzon Elyon which is higher than Chochma, it's not mitztayer in Chochma, it's beyond Chochma. That's we can come down in physical matters, because of the lack of his slapshus, because it's higher, it's a Ratzon. So meaning that the higher that it is, it'll come down to the lower level. And that's the bris, that's the memutza. And the real memutza, which is for the same reason, not two separate aspects. It's not that there's the Ratzon Hashem and then there's Gashmis, the mitzvah. The Ratzon Hashem is in the Gashmis of the mitzvah, so that manifests itself in it. Okay, so what we're saying now basically is that through Torah mitzvahs, you get the higher level, you get the hamshocha, you get the level of Ratzon, you get the level of Chochmas Timo, it comes down always with Gashmis. But how is it done? How could it be Torah mitzvah should bring about that union of the Shamas Yisrael? L'chayre kivan shoirin sof lav bechol elin midis ihu klal. Since the Ein Sof has not of these measures at all, has no connection to the midas of Atzilus, the spheres, and the world, איך יהיה תופס מוקם מייס התחתונים, שיהיה ייחוד פונים בפונים, how does their machshava dibur maisa, that we do here, impact above? The machar should learn to face, since he's not part of the midas at all, they can't be face to face. In other words, there's no place to meet up. Where do we meet the Eibishter face to face if he is not Ilan Midas, so which the world comes from Midas, and the Eibishter is above Midas. So how do we connect Ponim Beponim? Where do we come face to face with the Ein Sof? Hein mitzad Ein Sof, hein mitzad Shamas Yisrael. From the Ein Sof it's too high, and the Shamas Yisrael too low. Hinalzeh nemar anoichi oimed ben Avaya benechem lahagid lachem zvar Avaya. So I stand between Avaya benechem to tell you the words of Hashem. I'm the connecting piece, the anoichi. The anoichi misha anoichi ubchinas hakeser shelamayla mishneim. The level of anoichi misha, the level of keser, which is higher than both, which it means it's higher than the Ein Sof, and it's higher than the Shamas Yisrael. So the Torah and the power of Keser makes that connection between the Ein Sof and the Yidden. That's the power of Keser that comes through the Torah. So apparently the mitzvahs themselves, even though mitzvahs are also a bris and they're also connected, but the actual connection takes place through Torah, because Torah is in the higher level. And therefore, the real connecting piece is the bris, is really Torah. And that's the way that we connect the Ein Sof and the Shamas Yisrael. V'zehu Gimel. V'zehu v'hoya ekev tishmas mishpatim ha'ela. So we're going back now to explain the pasuk. V'hoya ekev tishmaun es mishpatim ha'ela. So what does it mean, mishpatim ha'ela? Dihine hatargum de mishpat hu hilchasa. So that means the laws of the Torah. So v'haya ekev tishmun es mishpatim, the laws of Torah. Shuin hilchasa Torah, laws of Torah, laws of Torah. Hainu. The key one shebe pasuk zeh mevayit hayichud in neshamas Yisrael ma'Kadosh Baruch Hu. He explains the union of a neshama Yisrael HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the level of the connection of machshava dibur ma'isa v'yid brings down machshava dibur ma'isa, and we connect with the level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, level of bris. L'chein nemar es ha-mishpatim ha'elu. That's why it says these mishpatim sha'yichud hu al yidei hilchos haTorah. That the yichud becomes through the laws of the Torah. That's how we connect. We connect in a way through machshava dibur ma'isa, but the yichud of neshama Yisrael HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the level of bris, and the higher level that comes through Torah. And the tishma'un hainu loshen asifa. Tishma'un is also from the language of gathering. Tishma'un will gather. Kimoi vayishama Shaul. Shaul will gather together. V'inyan hu. So what is the idea over here to gather? We're talking about Lekabetz v'lasef kol pezure nitzutze nafshei helikis. And what it is to collect and to gather together all the scatteredness of the sparks of his godly soul, which was tied in strange desires, through many thoughts and the scattered of the soul. And we need to gather them together from their strange thoughts. Now, doesn't mean that we're not supposed to do physical things. So, of course, it's not just in Torah and mitzvahs, it's also doing our work. But still, one should not have his soul scattered. We need to gather it from its place it was scattered. Dagam diksiv. That God, your God, will bless you in everything that you do. So there has to be action, there has to be doing. There needs to be the work physically. So what are we saying, that the Ritzoyne Zores, which are not Elokus, not Torah, Mitzvah, Machshava, Dibra, Maisa, why do we need to collect them? But that's what he's supposed to do. So he says, the thought should not be sunk in this. The efforts of your hands that you eat, meaning your hands, the work, your hands are involved in the work. That's what you eat. Should be only the effort of your hand, but not the effort of the mind and the heart. We have to collect those sparks that have been scattered when the soul has been scattered. Bring them back, bring them in. Tishma'un, together. Like the Pasuk says, if you will be pushed or neglected in the Ktseh Shamayim, Hashem will collect you from there. So you need to collect Tishmun, to collect the sparks. Just as we have to collect the scatteredness of the sparks of the soul, you also have to gather in the halachas of Torah. Torah is also, the learning of Torah is also scattered. The mitzad ha'pizur shenase benafshei, because the person is been scattered in his soul in various different places in which he is involved in. So this causes a block and obscurity also in his Torah. He's not able to sort out and to rule halacha truly. So when we're saying tishmun, to gather the sparks and to gather your learning as well, that you should gather the mishpatim, so you should be able to rule the halachas. The tishmun hasifa. Shetzorich li is hasifa benafshay, hasifa b'ilchas haTorah. It has to be in your soul and also in the laws of Torah, to gather it together. Because the skater, the piece of nefesh, doesn't allow you to really fully master the Torah the way you should. And the Rebbe brings out now this idea that we're saying now, Ekev Tishmon, that you have to gather from the sparks and from your soul, from the Torah. It also is associated with the pasuk in the second parsha of Shema. וזהו גם כי מה שכתוב, ואספת דגונך ושרשך ויצרך. You will gather the grain, the wine, and the oil. So, first it refers to also the different categories of the Yidden, gather them together. The Neshamas Yisrael Nikra B'Shem Degoncha. The Jewish souls are referred to as the grain, the tireshcha and the wine, and the oil. Gimel Chaluki Dargis B'Neshamas Yisrael. These are three different levels, steps in Neshamas Yisrael. Kahanim, Levim, Yisraelim. The Kahanim, Levim, Yisraelim. The Goncha, Elu, Yisraelim. The Yidden are called the Goncha, the grain. The Kemoi, Shebegashmi, Yisare Alechem Oika, just like in physically, the bread is the main staple. The Lechem Levav Enesh Yisod. Bread is what supports the heart. Shara Macholim Hemrak Toisofes Ala Lechem. The other foods are merely an addition to the bread. Kemikein Gam B'Neshamas Yisrael Ha'Ikiru Yisraelim. Same thing is also by Yidden. They're the bread. Their main thing is that they're Jewish. They're Israeli. That is not exclusive to Yisrael. Al-Kohen Levi is also Yisrael. The Gam Kohanim Levim and Yisraelim. So the first, most important is the Gonah. The Kohanim Levim have additional milas. El sheyesh b'hem teshuvah milas to Kohanim Levim. They have additional advantage. They're Kohanim Levim, but they're also Yisraelim. L'chein Yisraelim nikroim the Goncha. Yisraelim are called the Goncha. That's the main thing. That it's the grain, the corn, the fundamental, the staple, the main. Tireshcha is wine, but it's also shira. Has the word shira, and shira you need wine. Tireshcha elu levim. The avodah salavim ubamid shira. They say song. They named him shira layayin. You need wine, so that's tireshcha, the wine. I'm not sure if there's also a hint in the word tireshcha, which is also has some of the letters of shira in it. But in any event, the Rebbe says here that avodah salavim is by saying the shira song, and song is alayayin. So tireshcha represents levim. Yitzorecha, the oil, elu kahanim. That refers to the kahanim. Shavedos and b'china sheven. Their service is like the level of oil. B'chashoyu beruso de libo. The kohanim versus levim with song, with fanfare, with noise. But that's like the oil, which is quiet. Rotzen Alev represents the desire of the heart, but it's no physical expression. That's how the oil burns in a quiet way. So that represents. So first, Asafta de Ganecha refers to the different levels of Yid. That you should gather the Ganecha of Tzorechah shu yinasifas pizure hanitzutzim bechol hagimusudun sheben neshamas Yisrael. That is to gather the scattered sparks in the Ganecha, Tzorechah, Tzorechah. All categories of Yidden have their scattered sparks. Gather them together. It's one touch. Again, that follows the touch of Ekev Tish Me'un to gather the Pizur HaNefesh. Gam Pirush V'osafta de Ganecha Tireshcha V'tzarecha U'inyan Asifa Shetzarech Liyis B'Torah. We said before that there also needs to be gathering in Torah. Because the fact that in Torah is Pizur, he can't rule properly. The Torah Nikras Gam Ken B'Shem de Ganecha Tireshcha V'tzarecha. The various parts in Torah of called the grain, tireshcha, vitzarecha. V'emchiluka madreges, sheyesh b'Torah. Those are the different steps which are in Torah. The Ganecha, who galia the Torah. Ganecha, that's the revealed part. That's the grain. That's the bottom. the bottom line. That's the main. The revealed part of Torah. Wine is the inner part of Torah. Rosin de Raisa. Yain, Nichnas Yain Yotzasoy, there's the secret of Torah. V'yitzarecho Rosin de Rosin, but that's considered the secret of this secret. U'kamei shemesh etzof al gabei yain, because like oil, which floats on top of the wine, so that's a higher level than the yain. Kimvur b'im Rebina Bariches, as explained in Rebina at lessons. And this is what it says, you should gather the Ganacha Shuin and Asifa. It needs to gather all parts of the Torah. So the Rebbe brings out that what we said before, Voyekev Tishmon, that you need to gather in Pizar Nitzoitzes. You got to Pizar Nefesh in Torah is also manifests itself in the Parsha Shniya of Shema, in which it says Vasavta Degonacha V'Tereishcha V'Tzarecha, which refers to the Kain of Israel, and then also to the different levels of Torah, Pnimis HaTorah, the Revela, Pnimis the Torah. V'hoyo Eikev Zovo Eikev Tishmas Mishpatim Ha'elam. This is what it says, Eikev Tishmas Mishpatim Ha'elam. Shekasher Yiyo Ha'asifa de Pizure Nitzutzi Nafshi V'Asifa Ba'Torah. When there will be that gathering of the scatter of the sparks of the soul and the gathering of Torah, Ubechlolus and Bechlolus avodah Tishmon Shmartem V'Asisem Shemachshava Divro Maisa. Those are the Machshava Divro Maisa. Ayideize Yumshach Gam HaMachshava Divro Maisa Melmayla Lamato. Then we'll also get it from above to below. Sheyichud Poni Beponi V'Shamas Yisrael Ve'in Sovaruchu will be that Yichud Pnimi of Neshamas Yisrael Ve'in Sovaruchu, which is the level, as he said before, Mamshich Machshava Dibru Maisa from Torah, Shamloch HaSabriz, V'Saches, Teshuvah, the different levels. But this is all Ponim B'Ponim in the level of Ishtalshus and level. And then we have the higher level, which comes through bechol moedecha, which reaches the level of bris, which is higher than Ponim B'Ponim. It comes from the level of Keser higher. Daled. Amru kolzo ba'avodah de machshava dibra ma'aser, k'moi shehi mitzad rotzin ha'tachten ha'noiled ma'aseichel. That is the avodah of Hashem. You have the level of rotzin, but it comes from seichel. You have a reflection. You're davening, and your whole avodah is based on seichel because it comes as a result from your understanding. It's not bechol meidecha. That's not on a higher level. But the avodah when it comes to avodah in the hainu. Avodah drusa the liba shalamayla mitamadas, when the avodah is of the yaratzon alev, which is higher than tamadas. The bechlolus who ava the bechol meidecha. And generally, that's the ava bechol meidecha. It's a higher level. Chol meidach bli gvul shenemra beparsha d'shoyna de Kriya Shema. In the first portion of Kriya Shema. Over there, it doesn't say over here, it doesn't mention there's no scattering. That comes if your things will be pushed away. Hashem will gather you because the Torah and the mitzvahs that you did also had zorim and they were pushed away. So you need to bring them back together. But in this pasuk of Shema Yisrael, where it says bechol meidecha, there was no scattering over there. Like we find in the second part of Krishma. Lefi shemitzad ha'avad bechol meidecha, because the love of bechol meidecha shu'in oisin ritzoyne shel moker. That is called you do the will of Hashem, as the Rebbe discussed in the previous Mamer, that the Gemara says that the second parsha is not the Ritzon Shel Mokim. That's why Vasavta, instead of Vamdu Zorim V'Ra'ut Seinam, you have to do it yourself and not others do it because you're not doing Ritzoyne Shalokim, the Maggid explains why not, because it doesn't say there bechol meidecha. If you don't to serve the Eibishter bechol meidecha, it's not Ritzoyne Shalokim. In the first parsha, what does it mean? Oisim Ritzoyne Shalokim. So the Rebbe brought down from the Maggid, Shuyin Hamshachas Rotzon Elyon. Oisim Ritzoyne, you bring down the Ritzoyne into the Mokim, Shalamaylo Mishtalshnos. When you bring down this high level of higher than Ishtalshalos, and tzorich liyas avodah de vasafta, we don't need avodah vasafta. Kiim k'mesha kosuf over there. Instead of a vasafta, beirach the goncho tireshcho v'yitzarecha that says when it says in the brachas in Pashas Ekev in Perik Zayin, it says the Eibshter will bless you. The goncho v'tireshcho, because in Ekev we're talking about. When we talk about the level of the bris, which is higher, when we reach the level is higher than machshava dibur ma'asim, and we're mamshich ponim beponim, but we're talking about the level of higher than ishtalshalos. We don't need a safta. It's beirach the gon chateresh chavitzrecha. Shalo yibem b'chim pizar nefesh. But it's in the zoris. You do your the gon chateresh chavitzrecha. All levels of Torah. There's no level of pizar nefesh. She'inyan ze pizur hanefesh shaykh b'shtalshus dafki. That's when there is ishtalshus. Avo mitzad ava de bechol meidecha. But when we serve the Eibishter with the ava bechol meidecha, shemamshich imarotzim shalamaylo mishtalshus, in which we draw down the level of rotzim, which is higher than ishtalshus, and shaykh inyan ze, then there's no vasafta de ganecha over there. Is beirach latchil. So this is the real covenant of Torah, higher than machshava di maregla avodah. The Torah in yono hamshocha milmaylo lamato. The Torah inyan is to bring down from above to below a higher level of light into the hamshochas ha'oir elyon k'moishahu shaloi liferach hanivroim, to bring down the light of above as is, not according to the level of the created being. So that's the level of Torah versus the level of tefillah. The tefillah is to elevate, to refine, like the avodah of Binyamin. After the Ganech. Like the avodah of Yosef. How do you bring down the Ma'ila Mishtalshlus? You need the bechol meidecha first. That's by through the introduction of the avodah of Ratzin Halev. If it's a level with all your meidecha, then your avodah is in a level that you bring down higher than ishtalshus. So nimshach al dei Torah ha'oir shelamayim ishtalshus. Then through Torah you bring down the oir which is higher than ishtalshus. Zeu in amitis in abris the Torah. That's the true covenant of Torah from higher than ishtalshus. Shahat Torah ha'mechaber u'miyachad neshamas Yisrael. Torah is connecting and then connects the Yidden, the Neshamas Yisrael, to the level of higher than Ishtalshus. The level of tefillah is the level of Mata Lamaila. But the level of Torah, if it follows the Reusa, the Liba, the level of bechol meidecha, then you get higher than Ishtalshus, the higher level. How does this two connections that we're talking about, the higher than Ishtalshlus and the Ishtalshlus, the Panim Bepanim, how does this explain? And the Rebbe is going to bring out that this is also related to two types of Krisus Bris that we find. Sometimes we find that the two levels of Krisus Bris. Abimelech and Avram, they both participated in that same korban. But by the bris ben absorim, over there you cutting seems to be splitting, opposite of uniting. But when you both go through between the splits, that split means that it's part of one. You can't even separate it. It's a higher level of forming of a bris. There's a krisis bris on a higher level. It's not just that you both participate, but that you can't have one piece without the other. Let's look inside. Hey, the root of the difference between these two levels. It's known, krisis bris, yeshnam bezifanim. The way we form a covenant is two ways. Oifan Aleph, one way is Avram Avinu im Avimelech, how Avram Avinu formed with Amelech, through the 7 sheep. Sheshneim nishtatfu b'hakvosis, they both participated in these sheep. Shelakol echad mem hoyu chelik, was each one of them, Avram and Avimelech, had a portion in those sheep. And that's the way they unite. That's one level of krisis bris. The second way is you take one whole thing, you cut it into two. It's called bris ben absorim by Avram Avinu. Those who form the covenant pass through between the pieces. That's the second way. And this is a much more profound way. Why? Bechol. When you cut one thing to two, it would seem this is the opposite of whole. And this is separation. You broke it up. But truthfully, this is the true unity. That is that each piece by itself is only a half a thing. If you break it up, you show you have to be together because you can't. It's not a whole thing. It's a chatzi davar. You're no existence. Not two people participating in one thing, but you don't have existence without the other one. This is also understood. These two levels of connection. That when we talk about the bris of Torah in the avodah of ושמתי גונךו, הנה אף שנעשה על ידי המשוחס האויר, that's in the lower level of krisis bris, the example, because you bring down the light, but it's alayim komikim haru mitzias la'atzmi, he still remains an entity by himself. Omnom ha'Torah she'achrei hakdomas avodah d'ru'usu d'libo teshuvah. But the Torah that comes after the introduction of avodah d'ru'usu and teshuvah, the teshuvah who gam kein bris. The Rebbe adds the words of teshuvah over here, which is meaning the rotzin halev chomoidecha, but also the level of teshuvah, which is a bris, to return, and that's the covenant of Hashem, to be connected to Hashem. It's in a higher level. He's no entity by himself. That's the way you bring down the oil which is higher than the shtalshus. So now we also understand the krisis bris of Rosh Hashanah. It's in a much higher level than it is all year round. It's a krisis bris becoming one in a way that you know mitzias without it. That you are standing today in a way to pass you through the bris, which is on Rosh Hashanah. We said before, that Akev, that Hayom goes on Rosh Hashanah. So then we have this kind of move on, bechol Yes, Christus Bris, but also all year there is a covenant in Sodom Shamas Yisrael of the in Sodom Shamas Yisrael. Umau Inyan HaKristus Bris the Rosh Hashanah. So what is the unique Christus Bris Rosh Hashanah? Inyan Hu Christus Bris the Chol Hashanah. Yaderech HaKristus Bris the Shabbat. The whole year, Christus Bris is like the Christus Bris of the seven sheep, which everybody participates. It was a participation. Amram Beresh Hashanah, who avoided the teshuvah. Hashanah is of teshuvah. She'enei shum mitzias la'atzmei. He's no entity for himself. Yichud ba'oidei sof atzmei balarotzin. That's to unite with the Eidei Sof, which is the Baal Harotzin. So now we understand there's the two types of Christus Bris, and that's the higher form of Christus Bris and Rosh Hashanah when it comes to teshuvah, which is like the splitting and bringing both to the split. What Rashi explains, the Rebbe is going to explain that when there is the connection to the Eibishter that comes based on that level of higher than any calculations, then mitzvahs, strict ones, we lesser ones, don't make a difference because it's the Balarotzen, you're just connecting in a way which is higher than any calculation. It's not based on any measure, any chokhmah, or any level. It's an essence connection, so therefore it's kalos, chamuros, it doesn't make a difference. Ze yuvan gam kein mash pirish rash ala posik. V'ho yo'ekev tishmun. It says im hamitzvus kalos odom dosh ba'akev tishmun. And if the light mitzvahs that a person steps with his feet, you're going to listen to how is that connected? Rebbe explains. The idea is it says in the Zohar, this is like it says in the Zohar al Posik, why should I fear in the days when things are bad? Avoin akeva yisubeni. The sins of akevai, of my heels, yisubeni, surround me. Basically, the sins of akeva that people step on them, the light sins, yisubeni. And the Rebbe will explain now. Really, there has to be the level of Yaakov, the Yud, should inspire the Akev that even Akeva should be done, because what difference does it make when the Yud is there? But if you're lacking that level of the Yud, it becomes Akeva, Avain Akeva. Rebbe explains, the Hine, Yaakov Kasiv, what is the Avain Akeva? Those are the light sins that a person steps with his heels. By Yaakov it says that his hands were holding on to the heel of Esav. So what is, that's Yaakov. The Yaakov, the heel is Esav, but Yodai, he was holding on, is Yaakov, because the Yud came down to the Ekev. The Yaakov Pirusha Yud Ekev. Yaakov means Yud inspires even the Ekev. Shumeir bechol madreges ad bichinis hakvayim. It shines in all levels. It reaches all the way to the Ekev. V'uhu inyan hazihirus bechol inyonim. That's being careful in all matters. Gam bekalis shebekalis. Even the light amongst light. Shazo inyan Yud Ekev. The Ekev, the avoin akevai, the dosh ba'akova from kalis. No, Yud isn't Ekev. B'shoyre sham shocha the Yaakov Yud Ekev, and the root of this Amshocha of Yaakov, that Yud should come to Ekev. How do we get that the Yud will be in the Ekev? Shetiye boy azhiris gam bekalish bekalus, so that you're careful, even in the kalish bekalus, that follows because Hakol Kol Yaakov. U'kamesha kosuv hakoil koil Yaakov. The koil Yaakov are two levels. The first koil doesn't have a vav, and the second koil has a vav. Koil Yaakov brings you to Yaakov the Yud Ekev. Kol kadmo says in the Zohar Chosav, it's lacking the vav. Koil without a vav. The kol basra mole is full, it has a vav. So kol basra mole hu ha-Torah. That's the Torah. It follows the koil without the vav. The kol kadmo choser hu kolod lo yishtameh. That's lacking. Why is it lacking? It's not a full voice. It's a voice that's not heard. That's the voice of teshuvah, which is rusu deliva. Va'avodah hu ayin avodah rusu deliva rotzon halev bechashoyi, like we said before, like the kahanim bechashoyi. But it's avodah rusu deliva. Ekasher ha-koil. You have both. The koil rusu deliva without the vav, and then you have the koil Torah, kol kadmo v'kol basra. The bechol basra is what? V'uat Torah, sha'achre avodah rusu deliva. After the avodah of rusu deliva, you have the koil, the what? Azay yeshna in the Yaakov. When you have koil Yaakov, then you have Yud Ekev. Shu inyan hazhiris gam bechol shebekalus. That you're careful even in the light among the light. Which means when you're serving the Eberster without the you, without that hakdama, in a from blik vul, in a from rusu deliva bechol moedecho, then you make a difference. You're only doing with logic, and there makes a difference. This is an important mitzvah, less mitzvah, but when you serve with the yud, with the level of rusa deliba beyond cheshbonos, then the yud comes through the ekev. From the koil, the Torah through the rusa deliba brings you to the higher level. When he serves the Eberster with reason and rationale, there's a difference between the light among the light and the stringent among the stringent. Makes a difference because logically there could be a difference in mitzvahs. But when by the person you bring down what Torah brings down after the introduction of the avodah rusa deliva shelamayla mitavadas, which is higher than tavadas, azai ein chiluk klal ben kalos v'chamuris, then it makes no difference between the light and the serious. V'zeu hakoil Yaakov. Koil Yaakov. V'kasher hakoil Yaakov. You have the rusa deliva koil without the vav. Koil Torah. Azai ein hayedayim deisur sholtis. Then, as the Gemara says in Bris Rabbah, that when the kol Yaakov, then you don't have the yedayim deisur, then there can't be the negativity. V'zeu shekosuv lomo ira b'meiro avoyna kevai yisubeni. Why should it when avoyna kevai would be when there is not Yaakov, but it's only Akevai, Subeni. The Fishachosa Bechinas Yaakov Yudokiv. The other Chezes, and it's missing the Yud, his hand holding on, the control, then there is the Akevai, the Pizur HaNefesh, all of the consequences. Rashi explains it in the Posuk, Ima mitzvahs kalis, that you care why the mitzvahs kalish odom dosh ba'akov. Rashi explains because here we're talking about that greater level of connection to Hashem, that bris v'sachesed, and the level of ru'usa deliba. Then you make sure that you're careful even in the mitzvah kalis. Lefisha posuk zeh. So why does Rashi say "Mitzvahs kalish odom dosh ba'kovas"? Lefisha posuk zeh mevaydi yinam shocha shelamaylo mishtalshus. This posuk explains how it comes down beyond the shtalshus. Which is through the introduction of avodah rusa deliba. Then you learn Torah, you bring the highest level. So then you have Yaakov. Okay, but then you not have to worry about the avoidance. Shodom does ba'kovis. Lochem pirush Rashi shetzorich liyas hazirus gam b'mitzvah kalis. that you have to be careful even in the light mitzvahs. That tells us that you're serving Hashem beyond the reason and rationale. That's why you're careful with the light ones as in the strict ones, because we're talking about that level that connects you in the higher than Tam Vadas, with the level of Rusha, the Liba, and Torah, which connects you in the Ephon of Yud. Okay, so you're not making any cheshbonus. Is it a light one? Is it a serious one? Since it is higher than Vadas. Then Hashem keeps to you the bris, the chesed, and the shvua, which is sheyumshach ha'oir shalamayla mishtalshus. You get the oir which is higher than ishtalshus. Not just the oir of ishtalshus through machshava dibur ma'isa, but also to the level of bechol moedecha, higher through the level of connection, the level of bris, the level that comes through Torah. So now the Rebbe is complaining, why can't we just do Lamailo we say Kidain v'Kidain? You need both avodas. Why can't we just do the avodah which is Lamailo b'tam vadas? Why do we also need the avodah of refinement of raising ourselves? The Rebbe explains now like this. The Rebbe concludes the Mamer. Oizayin. The two styles of avodah. Ha'avodah the koil, which is tefillah Torah. You have the level of tefillah, the rusa, the liva koil, and also the koil, the vav, which is Torah. Hu avodah shebederech milmata l'maylo, bederech milmaylo l'mata. Those are the avodah of milmata l'maylo, the level of koil, tefillah, elevation, and milmata l'mata Torah. Kavur Baruch B'Kamemes is explained at length in many places. Since in Kedusha everything is inclusive, and everything is united. Within davening, you also have these two levels of milmayla mata mata lamayla. You have avodas halaylo, avodas hayoyim. The service of the nighttime, which is more when it's dark, you have to elevate. You have the service of the daytime. You have the different tefillahs in the day and the nighttime. That this is also similar to avodah, which is the nighttime service, which is with the whole medacha, that's avodah sayed. And even within the Chol Meidecha, Yeshnam Beizefanim Elu, you also have these two levels, the higher in the level. Yesh B'chinas Rotzin, U'B'chinas Tainug. You have the level of Rotzin and Tainug, Chitzonius, and Tainug is the Pnimius. Rotzin would be the level of Avodas Halaylo, and Tainug would be Avodas Hayoim, relative to the Rotzin and Tainug. B'chem B'Torah Atzmo, Yeshna Beizefanim. We also did two. Beim Torah Shebiksav, the Torah Shebal Peh. Torah Shebiksav is the Amshocha Milmailo. Torah Shebal Peh is what? That's Torah Simecho, the learning, the addition. Kol Mashetamad Vosig Osud Lechadish. Kavur Mokamach. By day Beizefanim Elu. So now when we work on both of these, on Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh, Bechol Meidecha, and all the avodas, you lost it, lovely Bezai, finding the Shoham and Yashfeh. In the future to come, we'll have both ways, Shoham and Yashfeh, Milmaila and Milmata, Ke'achshu Bizman HaGolus u'Behelim. Because now, while we're servicing and doing these avodas, it's all hidden. Whether the elevation we accomplish in the world to elevate it, like Binyamin, the level of Yashfeh, the level of Yosef, the Amshachah, the level of Shoyam, Behelim. So therefore, while we have it, it's only Behelim. It's hidden, it's obscure. But the future is it'll be revealed that which we impacted through our service in time of Golus. And that's why they say Vesamti Kadkod, Shoham and Yashfeh. Make it Kadkod, both Shoham and Yashfeh. Will have Kedem. You'll have the best of both worlds. You have such and such, both the Shoham and the Yashfeh, Lamata Lamata Lamata.